Hello there, and welcome to the mobile home of the Survival and Defense series. My name is Wimperman, and I'm the Chief Designer, Chief Builder, Chief Architect, and of course Chief Dumbass of the HoverCamper Mk II update project. So, before we look around the updated vehicle here, let's have a quick look first at the original vehicles that I've hidden behind. So, there are two versions, or there were. There was the more basic version with the slightly less component requirements, and then a like fully upgraded version, I considered it. Now, both of these were built before the game was fully released, so there was no such thing as CPU, there was no container extensions, there was no weights and volumes, there were some other things as well. Now, the only way you could really get a lower level version of something was to make it cheaper to build, which is why you'll see less glass on this one. One of the other things you may notice is it has shutter doors rather than doors, and that's because at the time the shutter doors were a lower unlock level than the normal doors. So that's why that looks that way. Now, this was an upgrade, as you could probably guess by its original name, the HoverCamper Mk II. It was an upgrade to the HoverCamper, that stupid magic roundabout looking thing that I built that has already been updated. So the interior layout is basically just a bigger version of that. You can sort of see, if you know that vehicle, you can sort of see it. So the layout in here, the bunk was there and it was sort of open. It wasn't its own little room. There was a tiny little pretend toilet. And then in the front here was supposed to be like a little living room where you ate and cook and stuff. And then the back of it was a little workshop job. Now, if we go to the upgraded version, you'll see some of the differences. So it's fully armed, whereas this one, there was lots of gaps left. Obviously, we didn't have retractable weapons either. As you've probably noticed, this is quite an unusual vehicle where it has its cockpit on the side rather than at the front, which I have kept for the updated one. But this one, as you can see, has windows. The room in here is moved around a little bit. I forget why I did that because it's so long ago. Doesn't really matter. Doors and a bit more equipment. So that's what you've got in here. Yes, no such thing as shields or anything like that either. So now let's have a look at the updated one, and first we will talk about its role and its task equipment. So as you can probably tell by its name of mobile home, it is a mobile base. You're supposed to be able to spawn this in early game and sort of drive it round. Now this is the third step up in the mobile bases. Give me a sec, I'll get the other two out actually. I've just decided that would be a good idea. Right, here we go. I've spawned in the two lower level ones. So this is the HoverCamper of the first run Hover Vehicles series. It is a tier 1 with an option to upgrade to tier 2. And it's quite small. I mean, it's about twice the size of the original, but when compared to these, it's quite small. But you can sort of see when compared to this, if you take off this front cabin and put the cockpit there instead, you have, and obviously take away the little bathroom. So you have a bunk and then a rear cab for working in, that way. And here we have exactly that. We have the cockpit, or the cab as it were, in this vehicle, with a bunk and then a rear workshop to work in. Then we have the next one up, as it's considered, the adaptable camper of the first run Addendum Hover Vehicles series, which is a bigger version. It's a very similar layout. So you've got the cockpit on the front, the bunk is there, and then a workshop area in the back. Although this one comes with a couple of upgrade slots for putting stuff in. It also is a bit wider. It has a corridor down the side and a little cubbyhole cabin cupboard type thing, and other words beginning with cup in there. So this then is like the upgrade to those. So the idea would be you might work through those. You might get that in, upgrade it to tier 2. Oh, I forgot to mention that this is tier 2 with the option to upgrade to tier 3. This then is the tier 3. So that was its role. The equipment, this is going to be difficult, just like it was with this. The equipment it uses to facilitate that role is it has a large interior, and it has some equipment for producing stuff and constructing stuff and healing yourself, and it has a bit of storage. Oh, and it's quite well armed. So unlike this one that only comes with 2 and that one that only comes with 1, this one basically comes fully armed. That's, you know, because it's tier 3, you get more CPU to spend. Right then, so let's move on to the next segment, which is propulsion and lift capacity. Right then, so it has 6 thruster jets for forward thrust, 4 at the bottom and then 2 at the top. It also has the same for braking and reverse. And then for both left and right lateral, it has 4 thruster jets. Okay, it's hover engines then. It has 2 large hover engines and 7 smalls on by default. There are 2 smalls holding up this little pad for a small vehicle that can be carried there. 1 under the cockpit, 2 under the front, 2 underneath lifting up the mining and drilling and stuff apparatuses. And the 2 larges are at the back. Its maximum lift has another large hover engine plus 2 smalls at the back and 2 smalls at the front. Now, its lift capacity with max lift turned on, so with all of the hover engines lifting, in 1G, it can lift around 469.4 tons. In 2Gs, it will lift around 234.7 tons. And in 4Gs, it'll lift roughly 117.3 tons. Now, the vehicle itself weighs 60.9 tons. So in 1G of gravity, it'll still lift roughly 400 tons. In 2Gs, it'll lift around about 170. And in 4Gs, it'll lift roughly around 50 tons, if my maths is right. 57-ish. Yeah, 57 tons. It also has 4 hover boosters for your jumping needs. And it has no RCSs. Oh, its mobility, there we go, its mobility with max lift off this is, and to be honest it wouldn't change much because the max lift only turns on extra hover engines, there are no extra thrusters and stuff. So, it'll move you forward at 25 meters a second, braking is the same because it's the same number of thrusters, strafing is 16 meters a second. For turning, it has 19 degrees per second of yaw. I don't consider pitch and roll to be particularly important, but if you want to know how fast it will pitch forward and backwards and roll left and right, they are there. So, as for how it drives, now I'm going to turn pilot mode on. It is a big heifer. A really big heifer. So even with pilot mode on, it's not agile at all. It's reasonably maneuverable, though. Its strafing and its forward and backwards acceleration is fairly decent, but its yawing isn't particularly great. But like I say, even with those two, that's kind of the price you pay for this kind of vehicle. Okay, so that's the end of that segment. Let's move on then to power, fuel, and air. So its power, it has 2 large generators there, which brings us nicely into its fuel. It has 7 large and 1 small fuel tank there. Its air, it has 7 O2 tanks. And it has 2 O2 stations, 1 there and 1 in the cockpit here. And as I usually do, I'm not going to press the wrong button this time. Debug and show oxygen, and then let's turn the oxygen on. Just to prove that it is oxygenated in here. It is airtight. No. No. Okay. Well, you won't get that little block shape there anymore then. I thought air could go through that, but I guess not. Oh, well, there we go. I'll have to resave it. So that was to prove that it's airtight. Is there anything on this? No. Right, so before I move on to the next segment, I am just going to overwrite that. Okay, the next segment then is its weapons, defenses, and construction. So let's get the weapons out. So it has 6 Gatling turrets. I'm pretty sure it does. Let's turn it. Let me check the time. Have I paused time? Yeah, I have. Why are you getting dark? I don't know. Okay, so it's Gatling turrets. It has 2 on the cockpit. There's 1 on the side and 1 on the top. It has 1 under the front. It then has 1 on the back facing rearwards. And it has 2 on the ammo pod, which gives you a bit of clue where the ammo is. 1 on top and 1 below. And of course the ones on bottom are there for killing things like spiders and such. It then also has 3 rocket turrets all along the top, 2 pointing forward, 1 pointing backward. Its defenses, well, it has no armor, it definitely has no shield, so it has none, technically. And its construction, as you can see from the, what's this called? The multi-tool, it is completely steel, at least the body is. There is some stuff like this little parking pad and this little walkway, for example. And round the other side, this is all carbon composite. But otherwise, it's mostly steel. And the windows are normal window blocks. They're not armoured. And the doors are normal doors. They're not armoured doors either. Good, nice and simple. Next then, we should talk about its resource gathering, production and storage. So for resource gathering, it has a tool turret for breaking down POIs that you may have just defeated. It has a drill turret on the bottom for drilling out ores and such. It has 2 constructors over here, and its and its storage. Ooh. So we shall start out here. Behind this shutter is its ammo container. This is a 2250 SU ammo container. Then we have an aurum wood container in here, which is 11 1/4 KSUs. There is a small container here, which is 1,000. And a even smaller one up here, 609, on top of the clone chamber. It also has 2 armor lockers, one there and one in the cockpit. It has 3 mini fridges, which, as always, come turned off by default. That's not what I wanted to... No, it was what I wanted to go to. There we go. Yeah, they all come turned off by default. So there's one in the cockpit, there's one in the little living area, and there's one in the back here as well for meds, supposedly. It also has, as you can probably see, dotted around a few of the smaller cargo boxes. There's a smaller one there and a larger-ish one there. Larger-ish. Get your words out. I think there's a couple in here as well. Yes, there are. And a couple in the cockpit. One in the cockpit. Right, that ends that segment. Let's move on then to its interior layout and any remaining devices. Well, you've got a fairly decent view already, but we have a little parking platform pad on the side here, connected via this little walkway with a ramp to the cockpit in there and the rear compartment in there. Let's go into the cockpit first. So there's a fairly decent open area here for... I'm pretty sure you can deploy your drone in here. Oh God, what's the deploy drone button? Okay. Can it release? No. No, okay, I was wrong about the drone. Never mind. You might be able to do this though. Maybe. Yeah, there you go. And then push yourself back in. So even though that cockpit is twice as big as the original, it's still quite a small space. Yeah, I know. I guessed that by the fact that I lost contact. Okay, so unlike the original vehicles, I added a way into the main vehicle from the cockpit that wasn't in the originals. So this one has a doorway here, whereas if we... Oh, shit. If we go through to the originals, there is no doorway in. You have to go out and then back into the vehicle. I am going to go out and back in, though. So here is the rear compartment. We have a little bit of a workshop area here that has the respawn point and a medic station for healing up. The CPU extenders are here. These are the tier 3s. I think oh no, I haven't got to that bit yet, but sorry, whatever. And then here we have a bit of an engineering type area. Actually, let's turn the light off so you can get a good look at the lighting, the headlight, I mean. So this is the... Those aren't animated. Ooh. So this is sort of the reactor here, and then the fuel is there. There is one of the extension slots already filled with a container. There is a slot there for more. We have a way out onto the other side, which you saw earlier. I went to the ammo box there. A ramp there. There is also a ramp down on the other side. Back in and moving forward, there's the door into the cockpit. Here is the toilet, which is slightly bigger than the last one. Make-believe pretend toilet, of course, with a little shower. And then up into the little living area we've properly seen before with the make-believe pretend Minecraft-style bed. The little bunk there, a sort of sofa-ish. A little table there and some nice views. Any remaining devices? Well, I mentioned the medical stuff already. I think the only thing left to mention, and you probably saw it earlier on, other than the ventilators, of course. Oh, shall I point out where they are? One there in the cockpit. There's one up there in the back cab, and then that one there that you saw me remove the block out the way of does the living area and the toilet. And there is another one in the rear compartment just there. Oh, yeah, and all the lights. All the lights are on the sensors. There's a couple outside as well. And obviously some lighting at the ground. I say obviously because you would have seen them when I was on the ground earlier on. There's at least one. I think they all have two. But I'm going to be careful and say at least one at each ramp. And as I was trying to say before I got distracted by the ventilators, are the LCDs in here that show you what the shortcut toggles are. Right then. So that moves us on to the shortcuts and signals. Fairly decent segue. So, as is usual with my vehicles, the first device group toggle is the propulsion, etc. That turns on all of the thrusters and what I was referring to as the default hover engines. Then we have max lift, which turns on the other hover engines, the one you can see turned, the ones you can see turned off under here. The next toggle is turret group 1, which currently is all of the Gatling turrets, and turret group 2, which is all of the rocket turrets. Oh, I forgot to point out, actually, when I was talking about its weapons and defenses, the target grouping for those weapons. So all the Gatling turrets are set up as my general purpose weaponry, and the targeting for those is such. It's any life forms and drones and small grids, but only the weapons of the small grids. And then the rocket turrets are set up as my point defense, which I've got set to soldiers, infantry, enemies, so not predators. It will also fire at drones and fighters, basically, and the weapons of those. Forgot to mention that. Okay, so the next shortcut down is headlights. There's one on the front of the cockpit and two on the front of the vehicle. Nice and simple. Of course, this comes with my patented red flare tail lights that are controlled by this shortcut. And the ventilators is the next one, as I explain in all of my videos, but just in case this is the first vehicle of mine you see. If we have a look at the power left when we turn the oxygen off, the power left doesn't change. But if you're in a breathable atmosphere and you want to save a bit more power, I give you a ventilators toggle. That doesn't save a lot, but it's definitely something. Right, and the last device group toggle is the fridges. Too late, mate. So they, like I said earlier, they all come turned off by default. I think it's better to have them not consuming power when there's no sandwiches in them. But in case you empty the fridges and you want to turn them all off in one go, you have the toggleable there. So let's move on to the signals shortcuts, and we have, as usual at the top, power save. Now the power save doesn't do much in here. It'll turn off that generator. It'll turn off all of the motion sensors and where are they? There is a switch in here. There is. I think there's another switch somewhere. There you go. So it turns off the light controls and the ramp controls just to save a bit of power. Turns off those two LCDs. I don't think it does anything else though, because everything else is on its own control, I believe. Yeah, I think that's it. Right. The next custom signal down is the fixed weapons. Oh, I forgot about this in the weaponry as well. It has 3 fixed Gatling guns under the cockpit. Obviously, they're under the cockpit to help you aim. And that's the Nope. And that's the toggle for those. Next two down, as you can see, are the drill turret on the bottom and the tool turret on top. Now, they do come with my patented hazard beacons. If you don't like them, you can always multi-tool them away. Production will turn on and off both of the constructors. The next one is exterior doors. So if, for example, you walk into the cockpit through that door there, and then you notice, as you look around, that it's left open, you can close any open exterior doors by toggling that switch. Ta-da! Okay, the next custom signal down is the drill turret light, and the one below that actually is the multi-turret lights. So, the multi-turret lights are that one, and that one. That one obviously points directly forward. These two are diagonal. That one points that way, and that one points that way to help light up any POI that you are breaking apart. The drill turret light is that one there, and that points diagonally down as so. There we go, right there. That brings us on to the last segment, which is its CPU and upgrading. So as I've already mentioned, it's a tier 3 CPU, the extenders are there, and the astute among you will have seen T4 written on the wall. So if you tear out the T3 extenders and all 4 of those blocks, you can then put in the T4 extenders there. Of course, you can also leave them in place if you want the redundancy of having the T3s in. Oh, did I just undo that? Yeah, I did. No, wrong button. You could put them in here, actually, which leads me on to this upgrade slot. You can put anything you like in here. Passenger seats, or a cargo container, or more ammo, for example. There is a couple of slots underneath, well, a couple of empty spaces underneath the top turrets that you could maybe put something in, more ammo, or a shield generator, for example. I would probably hang on the ceiling underneath one of these. Obviously, you can put more fuel in here. It is already painted to suggest you can. Okay, yeah, I think that might be... Oh, you can take out these blocks and put in more generators for the shield, actually. Oh, that's a very good point. I need to paint under those. Oh, I suppose you could do it if it bothers you. Yeah, take out the blocks and paint if it worries you. If not, you'll just have to see the damaged texture there. Oh, well, that's there. Okay. Right, now let's go underneath. So, helmet on, light on. Here we have a slot for another thruster jet on each side. We have a slot here, if you remove those 2 hover engines, to put in a nether large to match this side. I would recommend you doing that, especially if you fill this area with cargo, a cargo container. There is also a couple of slots on top for more forward thruster jets. I do believe that's everything. I mean, if you can squeeze a couple of turrets in other places, you can, you're more than free to do so. Oh, and the CPU, by the way, the allocated CPU, you may have noticed it as I opened up the menu. It's, well, it was 30,000 until I removed that block blocking the ventilator, and now it's 29,999. Right then, that concludes the tour of the Survival and Defense Series Mobile Home. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you get some use and enjoyment out of it, and hopefully I will see you in another video. So thank you again, and goodbye.